Welcome back to Rugby from the Stands. So, a few days back, I did the All Black squad video, the shock selections, the omissions, and as part of that, I built this carrier DNA chart to help us understand the carry profile of our selected players. And honestly, the response to that chart has been immense. It's been the most requested thing I've done on this channel. So many of you have asked if I could do the same thing for other teams. So here's what I've done. Since the ABs will be taking on the French on Saturday, I've taken the exact same chart and I've added the entire French squad into it using their top 14 numbers. And then I got a bit carried away and I built 8 more of these. So I was looking at things like breakdown work, defensive shape, discipline, and who creates, who finishes, and I also want to look at the line-out shape as well for both squads. So this is All Blacks versus France, mapped out player by player. Please note that I'm reviewing this and recording this before the team namings, so it'll be quite interesting to compare what Dave Rennie and Galtier pick and see the shape of the players that they go with. But for completeness, I've mapped the full squads here, right? Another thing before we start, and please keep this in mind for the whole video, this is not an apples to apples comparison. The French team, their stats are obviously from the top 14. And if you saw my Club Rugby deep dive, please go watch it if you haven't. You'll know that the top 14 has the most brutal defenses and the strictest referees in the world. Whereas the majority of our boys, their stats are obviously from Super Rugby, and a couple of them like Adi and Anton Leonard Brown, they come from the Japanese league. So you've got different leagues, different styles of rugby. So I'm not here to tell you that, player X is better than player Y. That's not the purpose of this, because these charts can't tell you that for sure or for certain. But what we are looking at and what these charts are really good at is showing you trends and anomalies. And it gives you a feel for how each coaching group wants to play and the kind of players that they've got at their disposal. So just think of it as a map of what each squad actually looks like beneath the surface. Right, so let's get into it. Let's start with carrier DNA. Along the bottom, you've got defenders beaten per carry. How good are they at evading defenders? And up the side, on the y-axis, post-contact meters per carry. Once a defender makes first contact with you, do you go to ground straight away or do you keep going? And as an elite carrier, that top right corner is where you want to be, because that means that you're beating the man and you're winning the collision. I call them complete carriers. And France, man, look at that midfield. Brau-Boirie, I don't even know who this player is, but he just clearly stands out. He's beating half a defender every single carry. So every second time he touches the ball, someone misses him. And then on top of that, he's carrying 4.5 meters after contact. And he's not alone up there. Gailleton, Deporté, and apologies if I'm murdering their names. I'm not very familiar with the French players, so please bear with me. But like I said, Gailleton, Deporté, and Gorge, and a bunch of their back three are all camped in that corner. So these blokes can step you, and if they can't step you, they'll just run through you instead. So here's the thing that actually surprised me when I dug into it, because the headline says France have more dots in that corner. They've got 18 to 15. But when I averaged it out by unit, the best carrying unit on this entire chart is actually the All Blacks back three. You've got Carter, Finyanganofo, Jordan, Moby, Clark. As a group, they're sitting around the 86th percentile for beating defenders and the 90th percentile for post-contact meters. Leroy Carter is making over 5 meters after contact per carry, which for an outside back is just absurd. And on the flip side, look at the French loose forwards. They're below the median as carriers. France basically don't carry through its back row at all. So you can already see how this game might look, right? France will be doing most of their damage through the midfield, through 12 and 13. We do ours out wide, through the back three. Both teams end up in that same corner of the chart. They just take completely different roads to get there. This is where I'm a bit concerned about our midfield defense. Last year, Proctor couldn't keep up with these French boys, and his tackle completion rate at Super Rugby was the lowest among our midfielders. So I won't be surprised if our most physical midfielder, Tupaia will be starting at 13 in the black jersey. Now, let's look at the anomalies. Clearly, Asafo Aumua is up near the complete carrier zone, and he's a hooker. Xavier Numia, a prop, is acting like a back three, and Borden Barrett is bottom left. Now, I love Body, but if you look at all the other first fives on this chart, clearly he's not been playing a similar style to the others. I'm not going to say anything more than that because, again, out of respect for Body, but I'll let you make your own interpretations on it, right? Now, let's move on to chart number 2, the breakdown, the non-flashy stuff that actually helps you win test matches, but isn't highlighted enough. Along the bottom on the x-axis, we have ruck arrival effectiveness. So when you get to the ruck, are you actually doing something useful? Up the side on the y-axis, we have turnovers won per 80 minutes. Same as all our charts today. Top right is where you want to be. I call these guys breakdown kings. Now count the dots in that top right box with me. All Blacks have 4. France have 0 Lucies. 4-0. Segner, Lakai, Adi, they're all living in that high turnover band. And honestly, that's the single biggest edge either team has across all 9 of these charts. That's a proper back row identity right there. But France have the most interesting individual dot on the page, and it's not a loose forward. It's Mavaka, a hooker, winning turnovers at nearly a steal and a half per 80. That's a hooker doing open side work. And that's genuinely a problem to plan for because the threat is coming from a bloke you weren't really worrying about. Actually, if you look at those on the top right for France, they're all hookers and locks. So the ruck work is actually done by their tight 5, which to me is a clear area I think that the All Blacks will have the edge and dominance. One more note, Simon Parker comes out as the cleaner, and you need someone who does the grunt work. That's clearly been his role for the Chiefs. Now, do me a favor and keep Mavaka and Miafu in the back of your mind because we're going back to those in a couple of charts. Now, moving on to chart number 3, let's look at attack. Along the bottom on the x-axis is try assists per 80 minutes. Do you help create tries for others? And up the side on the x-axis, we've plotted tries per 80 minutes. How many tries do you score yourself? So top right is the complete attacking weapon. These guys, they score and they create opportunities for others. And the standout dot in that corner is Cam Roigard. He's basically giving you a try assist every game and is not far off a try a game himself on top of it. For a 9, that output is ridiculous. He's 97th percentile as a creator and is 94th percentile as a scorer. For France's reply to Cam Roigard is Jalibert, and he's stretched way out to the right. A try assist and a bit every 80 minutes. He's the pure creator. He doesn't finish as much himself, but honestly, he doesn't need to. And here's one that surprised me. Lagarek quietly grades out as a really complete attacking 9, high on both axes. Not at Roigard's level, but he's a lot closer than I was expecting. Your finishers are Finyangonofo and Morbi. High tries, fewer assists, which is exactly what you want from your outside backs. And then my favorite stat in the whole video, Wallace Satiti, has scored more than nearly every loose forward on this chart. And he's assisted precisely nothing. 0 try assists all season. Just give the man the ball and he will finish everything and he will share absolutely nothing with anyone. Kyle Preston looks good on here too. But remember, he's played much fewer minutes. So he's a bit of a low sample. But directionally, you can see when he does come on, he is close to Roigard's shape. Now, moving on to chart 4, the fly halves or the first fives. Along the bottom on the x-axis is defenders beaten per carry. Can the 10 threaten the line himself? Up the side on the y-axis are try assists per 80 minutes. Top right is the runner creator, the 10 who gives you both. I wanted to visualize this because we know that Dave Rennie, he likes a 10 who can threaten a line. Now let's be honest, first glance, and this is the Jalibert slide. He's up in that corner on his own. But here's the bit I didn't expect when I went digging. His defenders beaten rate isn't just elite for a 10, it's 94th percentile across every single player in this dataset across 12 teams, 414 players in all of the squads, forwards, wings, everyone. A fly half sitting in the elite carrier zone of the whole chart. That is genuinely rare. Damien McKenzie comes out as more of a running threat than a creator on this one. Borden's the opposite. He's more of a distributor, sitting to the left, but above the assist line. So he's still making things happen. Intermac and Ruben Love sit more in the middle. That's really interesting for me because both of these guys usually have a very dominant physical nines that they play with. Intermac usually plays alongside Dupont, and you got Ruben Love who plays with Cam Roigard. So their shape is actually pretty similar. And if you're wondering where our running threats actually come from, if it's not the 10, then go back a slide. It's the back 3. So that's just the trade-off that each side has made. Let's go to chart number 5, defense. Along the bottom on the x-axis is tackles per 80. So that's pure volume. How much work you get through in 80 minutes. Up on the side, on the y-axis, is dominant tackle percentage. So when you hit someone, do they go backwards? So top right are your true enforcers. France have more hitmen. You got Wardy, you got Giroud, you got Capilla, you got Bamba, and this bloke again, Brau-Boirie, highly dominant when it comes to tackles. Notice our Super Rugby guys are more about effort. Parker, Bauer, Hannah, Darry, Lord, all high volume. They just keep turning up and making tackle after tackle. Satit is in that camp too. Huge workload, fewer dominant hits. Dominant hitting isn't in our DNA. Now let's move on to chart 6. And honestly, this might be my favorite one of the lot. Clean engine. Along the bottom on the x-axis is cleanliness. How few penalties and cards you concede. Up on the side, on the y-axis, is our work rate. And this is the clever bit. It's ranked within your position group. So props are measured against props, wings against wings. A prop doing big prop work gets full credit. Top right means massive output with a tiny penalty bill. The All Blacks have 19 players in that corner. France have 9. 19 to 9. Jordan, Roigard, Jody Barrett, Hannah Darry, Taukeaho, Carter Satiti. A huge chunk of our hardest workers are also our cleanest players. And here's the thing that for me is the biggest takeaway of this entire video. I went through every player who graded elite on the physical charts, the enforcers that we talked about before, the collision winners, and I checked their discipline. France have 8 forwards who are elite physically and who also sit in the bottom third of cleanliness. Guys like Miafu, Staniforth, Capilla, Bamba, Tatafu, Poirot, Wadi, Mavaka. The French have 8 of them. We have 3. Got Leonard Brown, Tupaya, and Adi. So look, France's power is real. I'm not saying it isn't, but almost all of it comes with the potential penalty risk attached. The same guys bringing the physicality are the guys giving away the penalties. Now, to be fair to France, in my previous video, I discussed the difference between each of the leagues. So please go watch it if you haven't already. The top 14 is the strictest refereeing in the world. So some of that is just the environment those boys play in. So we need to take that into consideration. And Jalibert lands in the loose cannon zone on this one as well. Huge work rate, but he does give a bit away. Gorge is France's best clean engine profile. Which brings us to chart number 7, where all of this comes together. Let's look at Jackal ROI, because winning turnovers is great, but not if you're giving away penalties for every ball you steal. Along the bottom on the x-axis is penalties conceded. Flipped around, so fewer penalties given away is cleaner, and so it's further right. Up the side on the y-axis is turnovers won. Top right is your clean thief, the guy who steals your ball without giving you anything back. As you can see, Anton Segner, he's 88th percentile for discipline, 85th percentile for turnovers, the cleanest thief on the whole chart, more than a steal a game, and barely a penalty against his name all season. Laka is not far behind him. Adi's high output comes with a bit of a cost, which means when he goes hunting, sometimes it can cost us. But honestly, that's the trade-off that you make with Adi. And at test level, you will see there's no one who anticipates and times a steal better than him. Now for France, Mavaka, he's at the 92nd percentile for turnovers, 14th percentile for discipline. And Miafu is decent steal numbers, but he is literally the most penalized player out of all 414 players in this dataset. Last out of everyone. So both teams can pinch your ball. The difference is what it costs them. When our guys go for a steal, it's usually free. When France go for one, more often than not, there's a penalty attached somewhere. And in a tight test match, those penalties can make the difference. The key thing to note is how this game is going to be refereed. I think the referee for this game is Luke Pearce. From what I've heard, he likes games to flow. So if that's the case, I think the All Blacks will definitely have an edge here. Now, let's move on to chart 8. And I'll be honest with you, this is the one that worries me as an All Blacks fan, the two-way contact beast. Along the bottom x-axis, post-contact meters per carry. Are you winning the collision with the ball? On the y-axis, dominant tackle percentage. Are you winning collisions without it? Top right means you win contact on both sides of the ball. And France's centers own this chart. Brau-Boirie again. And get this, across the two contact charts, he comes out as the most complete collision player on either team. 97th percentile as a carrier, 95th on the two-way chart. Gayaton and Deporté are right behind him. So their midfield can beat you with footwork, and when you do get your hands on them, they win that exchange as well. Our best dot up there is Aumua. Again, a hooker. 90th percentile for post-contact carrying and 94th for dominant tackles. He's behaving like a back three with a hooker's number on his back. But here's the uncomfortable bit, and I'm not going to dodge it. As a unit, France's centers average out at the 91st percentile for post-contact carrying. Our centers average out at the 41st percentile for dominant tackles. Like, think about that gap for a second. Their midfield is at its most dangerous in exactly the type of collision where our midfield is at its least dominant. That, for me, is the mismatch for this whole game. And here's the kicker. The obvious fix is to pick Tupaia and tell him to go hit things. So I reckon that Rennie's hardest selection call is going to be this one. And I'm willing to bet that they're going to choose Tupaia over Proctor to start. Now, let's go to the last chart. Lineout general. Along the bottom, on the x-axis is lineout takes per 80 minutes. So are you winning your own ball? And up the side, on the y-axis, I've put steals per 80 minutes. Are they pinching the opposition's ball? Top right are your lineout bosses. Now, I have to mention something here because I actually had this one wrong myself until I ran the numbers. I thought we didn't have anyone in that top right corner, but we actually do, two of them. Jamie Hanna, who's winning 5+ takes a game with the odd steal on top, and Sam Darry, who's got the most balanced profile of our locks. So both teams have lineout bosses, but the real difference is what kind. Our locks are mostly there to look after our own ball. The French locks are coming after yours. Oredu steals close to 1.5 lineouts every 80 minutes. That's about 3 times the rate of our guys. And Varide is over 1 steal a game as well. Josh Lord is your classic own ball target, and the takeaway is pretty simple. If our throw is sloppy in this game, France have the 2 most dangerous lineout thieves on the whole chart. And everyone they pinch is free territory and free momentum gifted back to them. Right, so we went through 9 charts. Let me try and pull all of this together. And as usual, you can tell me where I've gone wrong in the comments. For me, France's case looks like this. They have the edge in the midfield in this game. They are more elusive and more physical than our guys. Brau-Boirie and Gayaton beat you with feet and they beat you in contact. Jalibert, the most explosive creator on the map and an elite carrier on top of it, is a massive, massive threat. So my eyes are going to be on those 3. And they have 2 lineout thieves who feast on sloppy ball and a hooker doing back row work at the breakdown. Our case is less flashy, but there's more of it. The breakdown is our clear strength. And our thieves steal clean while theirs may leak penalties. 19 clean engines to their 9. So our work rate comes without the penalty risk, and our best players are spread right through the spine. We've got Aumua at 2, Roigard at 9, Jordan at 15, all of them elite on 2 different charts. France's brilliance is mostly standing in one channel, the 9, 10, 12, and 13. Ours is scattered across the park. So for me, the game comes down to 2 questions. 1, can we make France's physicality expensive? Their power comes with penalties attached. So our job is to keep forcing them to play. Slow their ball down, keep attacking the breakdown, make the referee keep making decisions. And 2, can our midfield survive their midfield? Because 91st percentile against 41st percentile is a massive gap. And someone in that 12-13 channel is either going to have the defensive game of their life or a very, very long evening. So where do I land? If the breakdown goes the way this data says it should, All Blacks by 2 scores. But I'm an All Blacks fan, of course. So take that with a pinch of salt. And if Brau-Boirie gets rolling downhill early doors, I reserve the right to be extremely nervous by minute 20. And again, one last time, before you guys protest in the comments about how ridiculous these stats are, I admit these are club stats from different leagues. It's just a guide to how these teams are built. It's not a prediction machine, so please don't come at me on Sunday. So that's the deep dive. 2 things I want in the comments, please. First, let me know which dot are you watching in this game. Are you looking at Aumua, Jalibert, Roigard, Brau-Boirie? And second, that midfield worry of mine. What do you guys think? Is it real or am I overthinking it? I genuinely want to hear your thoughts, especially the Proctor fans. And the French fans, you see these players every single week, and obviously I don't. So tell me what these numbers are missing about your team. If you enjoyed this one, please hit like and subscribe and click that bell notification. We're a small channel, growing fast, and it honestly makes a huge difference.